Hello, everyone. My name is Diane Fritz. I hope you all can hear me and see me and see this first slide on the YouTube streaming channel as well. I'm really excited to talk to you about the Data to Policy project, which I am part of in Denver, Colorado, and also how QGIS relates to that as helping students look at data and focus on social justice projects in the semester projects that they do. So the first thing that I want to share with everybody, just to kind of give us context for what I'm talking about, is a tweet that Todd Barr has at the top of his Twitter feed. And it's really important. So I'm just going to read it out loud. They say, "My favorite thing about all FOSS software is that a brilliant kid will never be held back because of the price of entry. Over the past couple of years, and as I work more with students, this democratization trait has become the most important thing for me. No gatekeepers." So I want to focus on that no gatekeepers part. And there's different kinds of gatekeeping. There's a license, and maybe a company that you work for will have it, but you certainly won't be able to afford it on your own. But that's why QGIS is so great, because you can go ahead and get this software on your own. So keep that in mind while I'm talking about the Data to Policy project and the students that are there. So who am I? I am the Geospatial Services Specialist, and I work at Auraria Library. Our library serves a really unique campus. We have 3 institutions on the same campus, and it's right in the middle of downtown Denver. And we have a really diverse student body. For example, MSU students, over 40% of them are people of color. And even more interesting in relation to QGIS is over 50% of those undergraduate students at MSU are first generation college students, and they're trying something new, and they don't have these expectations that, oh yeah, they're just gonna be able to get a job where all of these softwares are provided for them. So they're exploring a very new world. So the Data to Policy project is something that we developed back around in 2017, 2016 in response to police shootings. So Philando Castile and Alton Sterling were both killed in July of 2016. And after that, our campus held a forum for students to talk about how this made them feel and how their relationship with their own community policing was. And there was a lot of frustration. And my supervisor, Shay Swager, thought, what if we build a framework or an avenue for students to be able to look at data and come up with their own policy suggestions and have a direct line to legislatures and people that make these decisions so that they feel like they can do something about it. Of course, this was back then, and our present situation with the protests and how things are changing is great, a much different avenue of that kind of feedback, but we still think that this is a great format because what people are arguing about, if they have data backing it up, it's hard to ignore those arguments. So I want to share a quick little video that is on our homepage. This is the URL for the Data to Policy project at the library. And if I just go ahead and share this, this is what it looks like when you land on our homepage, and we have getting resources like backgrounds, readings, and data, but I just want to play this great video for you just to give a sense of what we introduce students to when they come here.
If you're Black, you have a disproportionate chance compared to white people of being killed by the police. If you're a Hispanic woman, you earn 62% of what a white man earns. The poorer you are, the more climate change adversely affects you. This kind of data is upsetting, and there are thousands of data points like them that represent a society that isn't built for everyone. The good news is that data can be used to shine a light on things that are broken, overlooked, or unjust. The next step to making things better is coming up with ideas about how to change them. That's where policy comes in. I know policy can sound super boring. The truth is that policies are behind some of the most important things that you care about, like if you can afford to go to school, get married, see a doctor, or get a job. The Data to Policy project is a way for students to use data to inform policy and work with local organizations and communities to make a more equitable world.
library.auraria.edu and D2P project is the URL, or I call it the D2P project or Data to Policy. So it's a great video. Sorry, Connor Shear was the one who did the graphics, and I just wanted to kind of put that forward, but it is quite short. So that's background on what the Data to Policy project is. And again, we started with policing, and now we just have the theme of public data for public good, because we found that students wanted to expand into whatever was really important to them, and we didn't want to constrict that. So when we host these, they are fall and spring symposiums. We do this every semester, and there will be a poster session and often panels where the students and community members and civil servants can all get together and exchange ideas in person. So how am I involved with this, and how is Geospatial involved with this? I am the student and faculty liaison for this project, and I also help the students access data to help answer the questions that they have. And not surprising to the community that's attending this conference is that so many of these questions are spatial, right? So they are things like, how do I get to the grocery store? Can my little brother get there safely on his own if he needs to get some food? What is our transit system like? Is affordable housing disappearing in a place where I would still be able to go to work? How do different kinds of racial patterns show up relative to wealth in the city? So all of these different questions end up naturally pushing a lot of these students towards GIS, but all of the courses that are involved in the Data to Policy project are not inherently geography classes, so they've never seen or touched GIS before. But a lot of the data, especially census data, as we all know, is very grounded in space. And helping students use this and a lot of other urban-centric data sets is basically my job in this project. There is a wonderful open data portal from the city of Denver. And if anybody else wants to think about having a similar Data to Policy project in their own academic institutions, so many cities are developing these open data portals now and allowing a lot of really good layers that are already reprojected all to the same thing that makes it really easy for students to use. But it's still hard for them to grasp where all of these things are if they don't know how to use something that helps them map it out. So that's what I do. I'll help somebody look at the census data, and in Colorado, we now have recreational legal marijuana, so the dispensaries, so that was a really big question recently because the police of the Auraria campus police requested, can we have more information about that? Because I didn't know it was going to become legal. And so we didn't know we were supposed to start thinking about this. So it's kind of a feedback and forth about working with social justice and helping police forces do their job better as well. So what are the common things these students do with this data? And it is largely, in this context, vector data. So if you had seen Michelle's workshop this morning, the difference between vector and raster, almost all of those data sets I had on that previous slide are all vector data. So visualizing the data is the most important thing, because Denver has a really, really weird boundary. This isn't even all of it because I lopped off DIA, or the Denver International Airport, because it's this strange tumor that's up off to the northeast. So when they pull this information and they just see spreadsheets at them, they don't really get a grasp of how it relates to space. But there are Denver neighborhoods, and people understand those, like 5 Points neighborhood, which I show here in relation to the Auraria campus neighborhood. That one has a fairly large Black population, but it's getting gentrified right now and is becoming River North, or the Rhino district. And all of the downtown skyscrapers are in between 5 Points and Auraria campus. So just being able to see these neighborhoods and their outlines, and then how it relates to census tracts, which are slightly smaller divisions. So you can see the lines that are the census tracts overlaid on top of these neighborhood divisions. Without being able to see this, the students really don't even know how to tackle this data. So just being able to see it is great. Then if they really start working within QGIS, just knowing how to do normalization and use expression dialogues with those attributes that are behind the data. So if I want to look at Anthmar Park neighborhood and think about how many Hispanic people are there, that it's much better to have a percentage of people in a choropleth map, as a lot of us know. So using the expression builder to normalize the Hispanic count from the census 2010 by total population to get that percentage is a really good skill for the students to understand. And then there's a lot of spatial overlays, like comparison, whether it's just a visual thing or they actually do select by location or do spatial joins. So this is a layer of the police stations with a 1 kilometer buffer put on the outside of them, just so maybe they are interested in how far away are parks from police stations, and they can do a comparison of different vector layers like this. So it's fairly simple stuff just to kind of get their fingers in it and start being comfortable messing around with data. Some of it is still complicated. So as you'll notice on this slide, I mentioned that you had to do a conversion from Denver's EPSG 4326 to something more projected so that they could pick a 1 kilometer buffer when they're doing these kind of things. So there is an understanding that's beyond just somebody in a sociology class to get to this point, but I try to help them out with that. So a lot of the projects are amazing. This is just some images of the programs from the fall 2019 symposium. And these were a lot of the highlighted projects that came out of it. Some people are doing it more environmental things, like Alexander Haig did a statewide look at oil and gas development in Colorado versus respiratory health. The Machine Learning Club came together as a group and did a whole thing on clustering. And so I should point out, not all of these projects use GIS to do it. It's just, sometimes they just use it to see the data, to understand it better. But then honestly, a lot of the students that get sort of more of the higher praise end up using GIS to work in their projects. And I just wanted to show this little graphic. That's the crime incident layer, which is very popular that a lot of people use. It's over 5 years and it has over 400,000 things in it because it's everything from white collar crime to assault. Everything is in there. So it's a very rich data source that gets used a lot in this project. A lot of the projects, like I said, are not based in GIS, but they use them as a supplement. And so we have a lot of really talented students that are coming from math and stats departments because those faculty are like, yes, we want to be part of this project. We want to teach our students linear regression while they're focused on doing something good for society at the same time. So one of these, this hate crime mapping was actually a linear programming thing but then they used the connecting points plugin for QGIS to symbolize this shift in where hate crimes were from one set of years to another. And this student got so excited about QGIS, she wrote a little wiki for her class about how to use it and what the plugin was and what she did. And I'm hoping more people will build on that. So these are really talented students coming out of the math and stats department, but there's a problem. These are not the students that were at that forum that inspired the Data to Policy project in the first place. A lot of the data and technology can be really scary. And I went to one of these sociology classes that were part of this and gave a workshop. And one of the students really at the end of it just went, wow, I'm in shock. And I think in a good way, but they were still feeling really intimidated. And that was a student that was brave enough to say this out loud in front of the class, right? So data and technology can be scary. And that's a bit of a gatekeeping thing. So when we look at the GUI for QGIS, what many of us see is, yay, functions, the developers are adding so many great things. This is really amazing, and it is. And we all appreciate that. But what students see are just too many buttons. And so as a teacher, instructor, what I try to do is show them a slide that highlights what you need to pay attention to. Don't worry about these things over here. You'll be able to discover that later. Use the tooltips. Look at the training manual. There's really great resources, but still, it still might be overwhelming for some. And just like load a map layer. Here's the Denver outline with the DIA tumor, which I call it, on as well. So just so how they can see the layers come in. But it's still pretty busy. So part of me wants to just use white rectangles to block out what they see, so it's a little bit more calm and they're like, okay, this is approachable, I can do this. But this doesn't work out because what they're seeing in their GUI is everything. I can't do this for everyone. So I had this thought, why don't we create a starter style QGIS that is just big buttons, simple, not too scary, but has the exact same format. So there's a very easy transition for the students or community activists, people that don't have access to teachers, to be able to approach this software and feel comfortable with it, knowing that there's a toggle that they can switch or a different version that they can load that will give them so much more power and functionality. But they need this stepping stone first to feel like I'm just a community activist. I know there's data out there. I want to do things with it, but that interface is scaring me. So it's the idea that I have is just a QGIS with bare minimum functions that's non-intimidating, that is a no gatekeeper on that intimidating as well as the financial side of this too. So my background, I am not a software developer. I am a earth scientist person that came into GIS and I love it, and I'm a teacher. And so I don't know how sensible this is, and I would love to get feedback from the developer community about if this might be worth the effort of doing something that's simplified, that people that come across QGIS on their own through activist organizations can start working with geospatial data and support their communities through that. Or if we try and go a different route and just connect with teachers better and help bring QGIS in its form that it is to those communities. Another thing that I'm curious about is what functions are essential, right? So I was looking at mostly vector data with all of the students that I'm working at, but it's hard to predict because marginalized communities can exist in all sorts of different places. And so maybe people that are in a rural area will want to really work with raster data because they're curious about water supply and they really need to think about DAMs and environmental modeling. So that's another thing. It's kind of brainstorming together what are the essential functions across more people than just me and my little brain. And then the other thing is the button pusher issue. Can we build entry-level version that doesn't bypass understanding, that people can do things, but it's not so much a black box? So for example, if we don't deal with having a reprojection functionality in this version, but we default reproject layers for people to, if it's, you know, a very large global thing, to 4326, or maybe have swaths of UTM zones once they define their area of interest and say, I want to be here, please pick my projection now, but then have a warning pop up that says, hey, we're doing this reprojection of all of your layers in this project for you. You'll learn more about this in starter or the post next version. So many different thoughts, many complications, but I think there's value in doing this so that QGIS, as well as staying free and open source, is free and open to people that would be scared off by the interface as it stands. So that's my thought. Trying to get away the gatekeeping of money as well, or as intimidation, as well as the money from the licenses, and just allow many, many people to access this. So that's what I have to share with you. And I would love to respond to ideas, or, you know, people that have developed parts of it and know how hard it is to remove functionality, or would we have to start from scratch to build something like this? Love to hear everybody's ideas and feedback.
Great. Well, thank you, Diane. I think you're spurring some conversation in the YouTube chat. I don't know if you want to pop over there to see what's going on. Not any questions per se, but there is a certain amount of customization that can be done. There's in QGIS, there is I believe it's under the settings interface customization where you can toggle certain things off. And I know that there's, and I've only used them a little bit, but the user profiles, which is really nice for going back to a default style profile where you've messed it up, you've made it more complicated, and then you want to just kind of go back to the...
Yeah, and I've done that, but even the one I showed was nearly simplified default. So even that. So right. I'm very cognizant about being able to remove toolbars and bring it down, and that's a great system, especially for people that work in, I work only in this, so I don't need these toolbars, and shutting them off. That's an absolutely wonderful aspect of it.
Yeah, so Karsten Veneman had mentioned the possibility of being able to save, I think, some of these options as a template that then you could share, and that person could just load this profile or whatever it would be. So I think the sharing of these is something that might be something that folks could work on. It seems like we're partly there, but there's not a full package that does quite what you envision. And maybe it's a matter of getting some people in a room together and figuring out what does need to happen, what is already there, what can we leverage that's already there, and maybe find out how to take the last few steps.
Yeah, it's just one of those things, as everything keeps building and getting more complicated, having that unit that stays very approachable is important, I think.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting to hear from folks who have a long experience with QGIS. I almost feel like I recall reading something years ago about, you know, what are the defaults, and I don't remember if there was ever sort of a beginner and advanced or anything like that. But yeah, what would you like to do as next steps? Get people together and hash this out?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, just even deciding whether or not it does make sense, or if the defaults can be pared down enough that it really does work that way. I'm a little skeptical of that just based on my interactions with students, but I've started a document where I've just put down what I think would consider the essential functions. And if just having a lot of educators get together and people that are, introducing GIS to people, like what do you use? What's important? What would you not be able to live without? And having that list and then seeing how that matches up with defaults or a potential different starter style version.
And there are a couple of comments. One person mentioned that even students who end up eventually doing complex GIS work, even for them, a starter view would be beneficial for getting up and running. Someone else is mentioning larger icons could be useful. And we did have a comment on an earlier presentation that for presentations where people are demonstrating things, larger icons. I
saw that. I was
wonderful.
Like, I'm not going to say anything.
Here's a question. Do you think that just changing the interface is enough, or does the functionality need to be removed in a way?
It's both, I think. I wouldn't want to change the functionality that much, but like I said, for that projection idea I had, that would be a functionality change where there is a build where some amazing person can write a script that detects the projections of incoming data layers and just does, like, this is your main data layer. Okay, I'm going to reproject everything for you. So there are some back-end functionalities that would make it easier. And I think the interface should change to be more simplified, but not change so much that it's unrecognizable between going up to the full advanced version.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. We're going to switch over to the next one, and maybe we'll continue this conversation in some form or another.
I hope so.